My name is Dennis Gill with the Americans in Wartime Experience. Today's date is 29 August 2021, and I have the opportunity and the pleasure of interviewing Christina Helferich-Polosky.
Yes.
And we are in Arlington County at the Women's Veterans Memorial. And ma'am, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
Okay. I grew up in a small village outside of Dayton called Clayton, Ohio.
Okay.
Lived my whole life there. Went to high school at a place called Northmont High School, and graduated there. I mean, I went to the same kids that I went to, nursery school with, graduated with them. So the house that my folks moved into when I think I was like 1.5 years old, it's the same house they live in now.
Okay.
So, yep, and that's the place that the grandkids, they all know. That's the same house.
Right.
So we still go back and visit.
Right. What branches of service did you?
The United States Army.
Army. And when did you enlist into the Army? You enlisted?
No, officer.
Officer, okay.
I got my commission through ROTC
Okay.
in 1998 through Virginia Commonwealth University's ROTC program.
Okay.
I was a distinguished military graduate there.
Okay.
And
Why the Army?
well, actually, my mom was a Army nurse during the Vietnam era, and after my first year of school, I needed to find a way to pay for college, and that's, we were just, after this weekend here at the memorial, we were all sitting around and talking, and it's funny, so we all kind of made the choices that we make in our lives, because my grandmother, she was a cadet nurse during World War II, and she got into the Cadet Nurse Corps because it paid for her nursing school, and so my mom, she paid for her last year of nursing school, going into the Army during the Vietnam era. And so I was like, well, my mom could do it. It was the first thing I thought of. I was like, I'll see if I can get a scholarship.
Right.
And that's exactly what I did. I walked in, wasn't recruited or anything like that. Just walked into the ROTC program there at VCU and said, do you guys do scholarships or anything like that? No idea. And yeah, they did. And
Okay.
so I got a 3-year scholarship there, finish out the rest of my school. Had to go like to their basic camp or whatever, the normal ROTC route, to verify the scholarship is what they called it. Yeah, it was a great experience. I was commissioned in 1998 as a transportation officer, and that's where I spent my career. I went to transportation officer basic course in 1998 at Fort Eustis, Virginia, and then actually did my company command at Fort Eustis.
Okay.
So it was a long time after actually being a lieutenant and everything, but yeah.
Does the Army, did you pick that career field, or how does that work? How do you, is it something the Army says this is where you're going because we need you there, or?
So you kind of, like in the Army, they give you like your top 5 choices or whatever of what you want to do. I had a son while I was in college, and so at first I had wanted to, before I was a parent, I was going to fly helicopters. I thought, that sounds really cool. I want to fly helicopters. Then after I had my son, I was thinking a little more pragmatically. So I actually did some research before writing down what I wanted to do. And I actually looked, and the Transportation Corps had the highest marks for, they had the highest promotion rates for women in their ranks, because there were no actual, because it was between military intelligence of something that I was kind of interested in, but they still had operational career fields within military intelligence that were closed to women at that time in 96, 97, 98, like when I was going to school.
Right.
And because there were some operational fields like in the combat engineers, which I thought was interesting, and you could be a woman and go in the engineers, and you could be a woman and go military intelligence. But once you got, as an officer, once you got higher in rank, there were certain jobs that were closed to you because you were a woman. That wasn't the case in transportation and logistics and the combat service support. And so when I was looking at that, I put that's why I put Transportation Corps the number one. And I think that, you know, sometimes combat service support, you know, when you're ranking, you know, what you want to do, back then,
Right.
it's not the case now, but you know, that kind of gets, you know, the pogues in the back, right?
Right.
But for women, that was one of the few fields that we could advance at the time more equally. We were on a more equal footing because there weren't any jobs that were close to us because of our gender.
Right.
Like, we technically were on, you know, the same footing, and we technically could compete for all the same commands and things like that as our male peers, because they couldn't, you know, rule us out.
Right. Right. So from there, where do you go? Where's your first duty assignment?
My first duty assignment was actually Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay.
So I was, I started out in the S2 shop, coming out. So you would think transportation officer, but that's, you know, kind of as a butter bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of put you wherever when you're waiting to get into transportation. I was at the 260th Quartermaster Battalion. And so they only had one truck company, one transportation truck company. At that time I was married, and to another transportation officer. And so he went into the transportation truck company first. And so I was up in the staff of the quartermaster company. I'm a quartermaster battalion, so I was at the S2 shop. And then he went on staff when he was done with his transportation time. And then I was a truck platoon leader, and then I was an XO, and then had one of my children, one of my sons, while I was there, and then went as an XO at the truck company, and then I was selected to be a commander as a first lieutenant of an MCT, a movement control team, up on the flight line on Hunter Army Airfield. A movement control team is just a small unit, so it didn't really count as command time.
Right.
But that's when 9/11 happened, and so Hunter Army Airfield got real busy because the restaurant right there by Fort Stewart, Georgia, so that we were flying a lot of people in and out. Before then, we were doing a lot of S4, K4 missions for Bosnia and Kosovo,
Right.
In and out, flying there at Hunter Army Airfield. So, you know, when you think Transportation Corps, you think a lot of convoys and things like that, but we also do, you know, movement control. And
Right.
before, you know, we got into, you got to think, you know, I was in, you know, between 1998 and before, you know, we got into Iraq in 2003, you know, there was other things that Transportation, you know, Corps did.
Right.
But then 9/11 happened, so we were extremely busy on the flight line there, the movement control team.
Right.
So.
Tell me about that day.
So I was, like I said, a movement control team commander. I was actually at my desk early because I would get the kids up and get them to school well before. They probably got to school about 7 in the morning. So I was already at my desk at the airfield there, and I remember somebody had come in to my office and said a Cessna had hit the World Trade Center. And working at on an airfield, me and my staff were like, what idiot hit? There's no way a small plane hit. It's impossible.
Right.
That's just impossible, because we're thinking an idiot hit that couldn't have happened. And so we all turned on everybody had, you know, big TVs because we were like in the because you have the holding areas and everything where you would have troops, you know, before they got on their planes and everything. And so we're put on thing, and we're like, that's not the profile of a Cessna. That's there's like something's going on. And so we're trying to figure out, because we're on the flight line, so we have, because a lot of people don't know this, but Hunter Army Airfield is a secondary location for a shuttle landing.
Okay.
It has all the, you know, all the specifications, like it can be there, and Air Force One has landed there before. So I mean, it's a really cool airfield. So it has a lot of all at the time,
Right.
in 2001. I mean, it was a pretty high-tech airfield, which I'm sure it still is now. And so we had everything on, and we're just, when we're watching and we're going, something's not right. Nobody was thinking terror attack at that time. Although when I was the S2 of the battalion, which is the security officer, we had been, as part of the OPSEC and security thing, we had been saying prior to that time about the things that we were doing. We were, warning against, people taking over planes and things like that. And I think, we had said, people using them as, suicide bombs, but it was so way out there. I mean, it was, we were still advising people, don't, reveal that you are if someone takes over the plane, don't say that you are a soldier or things like that. You hide your ID. You don't try and take over the people. You do what they say if someone takes over your plane and things like that. But I mean, we were talking about Al-Qaeda and things like that during the briefings, the S2 briefings that I was giving, prior to 2011. So we knew in the military that they were out there. And we had, so it was a presence. But and of course we knew about the Cole bombing and all the things that had been leading up, and the embassy bombings and things like that. So we knew something was coming. But on that day when they were reporting and the ticker tape was saying Cessna hitting thing, we knew that profile of when they were showing was not a Cessna. And then so we were watching on the big screens when the second plane hit, and immediately our whole the Hunter Army Airfield just shut down. And because when the second plane hit, we knew immediately it was a terror attack. Now, of course, nobody else on the news did, but we, when we saw the plane hit, then we immediately knew that was a suicide bombing. And the whole fort, the airfield is actually before bases that are now all they are all fenced in now. This airfield is smaller, and it was already fenced in, and so it was actually closed down. And that night, the school that my kids were going to was a small Christian school, and the sisters there, I called them and they knew what would happen, and they had told me they actually took my kids home that night with them because we couldn't get off base. My husband and I couldn't get off base. And they said, don't worry about it. We have you, because as things started progressing, and then they found out about a couple hours later, the Pentagon was hit. The sisters at the thing actually took my children home, and we had 3 at that time because we had another baby. So we had 2 in diapers and then a kindergartner. I don't know what we would have done that day without them, because we were actually locked down on that installation. And a lot of the installations couldn't lock down at that point because they weren't hardened up, but we were on an installation that could, the gates were closed, because it was an airfield that nobody knew what was happening. And it was, but we were just watching it all unfold. And since we were on a airfield, it was a little kind of closer to home to us. Even though it was on Savannah, Georgia, it was the Army took it very seriously, but it was a high value target. Right. So they hardened pretty much every airfield that they had. And when they grounded everything, we were one of the locations where they were starting to ground places. So we had to start taking places and military flights in. So it was a long night.
Right. Did the gravity of that day, was it apparent at the time? Here we are 20 years later. In a few weeks we'll be celebrating the 20th anniversary, and we're still at war because of that day.
It was. I know I took my people aside, and I, it was kind of like, it wasn't like an impromptu speech, but it was like, this is going to be the start of something. I don't know what it's going to be the start of, but this is the start of something serious. And I took him aside and said, we need you need to prepare yourselves. Because we absolutely felt it. And I think it was coming from higher. We could feel it in our leadership, and just being a lieutenant, you could feel it. You could feel it coming down. I think because I think our commanders and stuff we're going to war. Like they were immediately, we're gonna, if not tomorrow or today, we're gonna be, just wait, we're gonna be put on like 24-hour alert or whatever. I mean, and we as lieutenants didn't know, but you could feel it, wearing the uniform at that time.
Right.
You absolutely knew. We had no idea it would be what it is now, 20 years later. But we absolutely felt something was going to happen. It's like you could feel it. You could feel it in the air. And then, of course, it was just played over and over on the news. And it was odd because the reaction that in the civilian world was weird, because you were now being noticed everywhere you went because you were wearing the uniform, and you weren't noticed before. And so, and it was a positive reaction, but it was also, you were getting a reaction that you didn't know quite how to deal with, because it was kind of odd, because people were like, well, because people kind of were asking, well, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? And you're like, I don't know. Do you know something? Because we don't know. We don't have any answers that you have. But yeah, it was a weird time.
How did things change from September 11th, September 11th to September 12th, and the days and weeks that followed, as far as the Army goes?
For us, I was just really incredibly busy, because the flight lines really ramped up, because Fort Stewart was, we were sending a lot in direct support of the first couple months going into Afghanistan. They were using Hunter Army Airfield to stage a lot to go into Afghanistan, the first couple things that were going into Afghanistan. And so my job was really busy. That first 6 months were just a blur. And I was, had, a couple babies at home. And my husband at the time actually left to go to school. So I was kind of on my own with the kids. And this job now that was almost, it was like 18-hour days. So it was a blur. So I really didn't have time to take in what was happening in the world at that time, because I was just getting flights. We're still bringing in flights and doing the normal rotations for, the Kosovo and the Bosnia flights, but now we were doing a lot of the missions, sending things into Afghanistan. And so that was sobering.
Yeah. Eventually you would deploy?
Yes. So I went to 2002, I went to school for my captain's career course, so I got promoted to captain. Went to my captain's career course back at Fort Lee and Fort Eustis for transportation. Mm-hmm. And then that's when I ended back at Fort Eustis, so with the 7th Transportation Group. And so it's kind of almost coming back home to the home of transportation, which is Fort Eustis. And it was wonderful. So I really had a good year, because it's kind of like you're taking a knee when you get to go to school, which was nice after after the it was really hard getting through after September 11th, and then all that work, doing all the flights and working that flight line, and then so it was nice to take a knee for a little bit and go to school, and then get to promotion was nice to be a captain.
Right.
So I got to Fort Eustis with the 7th Transportation Group, and I was in operations, so in the S3 shop, working operations, and deployed on Valentine's Day, 2003. And I remember was newly divorced at that time. I think I'd just gotten divorced at the beginning of that year, so just at the end of January. So I just divorced, and so I was still leaving. Like, I think the 2 of the kids were still in diapers. The other was a first grader. So, and my cousin came to be a nanny for me. My ex-husband was also stationed at Fort Eustis, but he was getting ready. He deployed probably a couple months after I did, but he was there with the kids for a little bit. But so it was still a little, you're still a single parent trying to juggle that.
Right.
It's a stress. It was the first wave of deployments, so our orders only said 6 months. Everybody thought, everybody thought it was just going to be like the first Gulf War. All of the 06s, all of the colonels, everyone who had been in the first Gulf War said, we're going to be in and out in 6 months. This is all it's going to be. Those are the guys who had the combat patches before us, were the 06s and above, and they're like, it's not, and we had a couple of those guys in the S3 shop with us, and they were like, not, and I still have my orders this day, and it's for 180 days. So I mean, that's literally what they thought. So we got in there, like I said, in February. We weren't going to go in until March. Of course, we didn't know that at the time. So we got into Kuwait, Camp Arif Jawan, Kuwait. We were in the staging areas as a transportation officer, so we were working in the operations. So we were getting all the equipment in. We were lining up convoys. We were, working the staging areas for everything, as transportation officers do for the 7th Transportation Group. And then, but that's what everyone was saying, 6 months in and out. But we were gearing up for it to be, everyone was talking about weapons of mass destruction. Everyone was talking about chemical weapons. So we were there, about a month before we lined up. I was picked to be in the 7th Transportation Group forward. So I was going to go forward with the team that went across on the first day. So we staged forward with the command group of the 7th Trans, who's going to be responsible for keeping track of all of our equipment forward when we cross the berm, which I said would be no problem, which I'm sure you can imagine was no problem. So we, on the first night, first day, we crossed the berm with everybody else into Iraq. We slept on the hood of our Humvees every night. There were no camps or everything. A lot of it was a blur, but I mean, we convoyed in MOP 4, which was our boots, our mop gear, our gas masks, because they said we were going to be, hit with chemical attacks. It was hot, even though it was March. and every night we would stop and watch them bomb the next place that we were going to go into. And I just remember, it was like we're sitting on the hood of our RMVs, watching fireworks show. Like, just, it was surreal,
right.
And we had no real communications. we were just the first like week or so just waiting to get into a place to try to set up. The first place that we did set up was at a airfield, Chalil airfield outside Al Nazria, and that's where we spent most of our time. After that, a couple months there, and that's where I ended up being a night battle captain, so in charge of keeping track of all of our convoys and things like that, and all of our equipment, because everybody loves to steal flat racks. So,
Okay.
so, and as you can imagine, we don't, in wartime scenarios, you don't really keep track of your stuff anywhere. So, especially with the technology we had back in 2003, but we somehow did. And again, a lot of it's a blur. But me and my NCO was another female, and we slept during the day and we were up at night, and we were still, in that whole time, we were still in MOP 4. So basically we just took the gas mask off and had it at our side. But every now and then they'd come down on the net and said, hey, we found some unexploded ordnance in some bunker and we're gonna explode it. We don't know what it is. So that's typical Army. Right. So everybody put your gas masks on and we're gonna explode it. So they would wake us up and tell us to put our gas masks on, and then we'd fall back asleep because it was the middle of the day. Right. And then they'd forget to tell us that it was all clear. And so we'd wake up a couple hours later and we're just drenched in sweat, because, we fell asleep with our gas masks on. Yeah. But, so that's pretty much, how it went. I mean, we didn't have showers, we didn't have warm food. We just ate our MREs, 3 times a day. But we had the tents, that we put up. Eventually, they got the all clear. I guess if I'm remembering, everybody said that, Bush went on an aircraft carrier and said, mission accomplished, we won. We didn't see that, but we heard about it. So we're like, woohoo! And so, but around the end of, I think it was end of May, they chose me. I got a call and said, hey, we got your company command. We want you to come home, redeploy early. We're going to give you this company command back at Fort Eustis. And I was like, sweet, I'm in. And so they redeployed me early. So I was only over there a little over 4 months. And I think in that time I lost about 30 some pounds, probably because most of that time we were in our MOP 4, right. And it was hot. I remember several times, there were a couple shamals which was the time where you couldn't see like your hand in front of your face because of the sandstorms and stuff like that. And we jumped a couple times, to a rail yard. It was where we set up another headquarters forward, just trying to. And another time I got a root canal. Something happened to where one of my things, so I had to go to BIOP after we cleared BIOP, and they had a field dentist set up, and he had a battery-powered drill that he operated, and every time the drill operated, the lights dimmed because it was battery-powered. But it was really bad. Like something happened with my tooth. I might have hit it or something. But I remember I had to go to BIOP to get that done, because it had to be really bad if you had to get it done. So it must have been bothering me that bad. I just remember that every time he hit the drill with his foot, that the lights dimmed, but didn't have any Novocaine or anything like that. But
something out of a movie.
Yeah, it was less like, but it was much better after that. Right. So I remember it was like, he's like, this will last you until you get back home. And right. I was just like, so that was I remember that happened. And then back to doing more transportation stuff there.
Right. When you were how long were you in Iraq?
So just until the end of May, and then they got the call. Okay. And redeployed me home so that I could take command, because just over 4 months. Okay. And then and I think I was home in June. I got home in June, and I took command in July, the first part of July, of the 508th Transportation Company, truck company, there on Fort Eustis, and it was a company that supported the transportation school, and it provided all the trucks and the soldiers for the transportation school, and did all the live fire exercises and everything for them. And then eventually, when I got back, I found out I got a Bronze Star for what I did for the, while I was at the battle captain and everything that we did in Iraq. So they gave me that when I got, after I got back.
That was nice.
And so I was a little surprised about that. They told me that when I was taking command. So, and then we took over the 508th Transportation Truck Company. It ended up that truck company got the Truck Company of the Year for 2004, and then I was the 2003 Transportation Officer of the Year by the Transportation Regimental Association. So I was like, wow, that's a lot of stuff happening. But that was really cool. And then I was able to I was put on a panel at West Point that fall as well. And I was able to go and talk to a lot of officers there. They wanted people who had been deployed to go talk to their cadets. And I was glad I did, because I had a lot of female cadets pull me aside afterwards and talking about choices about what to do with their career and what branches to choose and things like that.
Right.
And I was able to kind of plug the different combat service supports and about how they didn't have anything blocking there to make choices on what they wanted to do, so, and blocking their career paths and things like that. But so that was a very that time was a very good time in my life, because it was I was until I think it was January of 2005 was when I gave up my command in January 2005, and then went out to be the NTC. I went out and went to the National Training Center and was an OC out there. So that was smack dab in the middle of the Mojave Desert, Fort Irwin, California. And by that time I was engaged to Kevin Polosky, so of the Helferich-Polosky, and he was just getting back from his deployment to Iraq, and so he was going to be joining me there that summer. But it was good going out there, because then I was able to share as OC out there. I was on the 3-7 team, on the gold miner team. I was gold miner 3-7, and we did convoy operations, and so I was able to share a lot of the things that I learned in Iraq there. A lot of things that I learned in the schoolhouse, supporting the schoolhouse with my company command. So you're putting it to good use, getting units ready to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. And then after, then Kevin and I were married, and we had Hannah out there, my now 15-year-old daughter, and then I was gold miner 7. Gold miner 17 or 8 Alpha. Anyway, I worked in the when I was pregnant out there, because you kind of can take a knee when you're out there too. When you're, I was in the analytics group, so I got to work in the shop making a lot of the doing a lot of the putting together a lot of the analytics and things like that for Gold Miner 7. So that was a good 2 years out there, and then we came to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, with the 101st in 2007, and that's also when I was career field designated into information operations. So when you're a major, you can get career field designated out of your primary branch.
Okay.
And I was selected to go to their Q course, and that's information operations, and they kind of call it like the spin doctors of the Army, but I wouldn't say that. It's more marketing maybe, but it's more wordsmiths I like.
Messaging.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly what it is. You need to own the message, own the information sphere. And so I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that because that they made me the strategic communications officer for General Slosher for CJTF 101, and we deployed in 2008 to Afghanistan. And General Milley was the O, and General McConville was the S. And so General Slosher was in charge of CJTF 101, and I got to interact with him almost daily, writing him talking points and compiling reports for him. And that was it was a hard deployment, but it was a really really good deployment. But what I didn't know at the time was that some of the burn pits and some of the things that I was exposed to during 2003 had been working in my body since 2003. And while I had known things were kind of, my body had been breaking down, when I had gotten to Afghanistan, the environment there, my body started to kind of attack itself again, being exposed to other contaminants there in Afghanistan. So I was there from March until July, and the time I was there, I had 2 anaphylactic reactions that landed me in the field hospital, but they didn't know what it was.
Right.
But it was kind of no big deal. I was just like, oh, that was odd. And then the last time I woke up on a transport plane to Landstuhl, where I had stopped breathing, and actually my husband, who I was deployed with, found me not breathing, my eyes swollen shut, my throat swollen shut, hives everywhere on the jock floor. And then they wouldn't let me go back because they didn't know what I was reacting to. And so it turns out that I had one of the conditions I had was something called exercise anaphylaxis, or cholinergic urticaria, but basically my immune system was kind of attacking itself. And it's because of something that I was exposed to, but they don't know what. And so in 2009, I was medically retired. The Army did medically retire me at 100%. And at that point, all my post-deployment reports said I was exposed to an unknown contaminant, and all my paperwork says that. They just don't know what. And so now that the VA is looking into it now, and they're piecing together that I was exposed during my both Iraq and Afghanistan. And so now there's a whole bunch of kind of different things going on, and so I've had a lot of different immune issues for over the last decade. And actually it's just been the last 6 months that the VA has been re-looking at them all. They've denied about half of them over the last decade. They've rated half of them over the last decade. And now they're just actually looking at them going, oh, yeah, we probably should have looked at it. But that's been in the news a lot.
Yeah.
They're re-looking everybody's old claims. I'm just lucky that I keep everything. I keep all my files. I keep all my post-deployment reports and things like that. I worry about all the veterans who didn't.
Are there others? How did they make the connection to Iraq? I'm guessing there's other people that have the same types of issues.
I think so. I mean, right now, they're doing like respiratory, and like with me, it's respiratory and gastrointestinal, and some neurological, and I think they're seeing higher increases in those. Like they're saying, like that they're having a high population, and if you were, stationed in these specific spots, for me, it's easy. Like on my Bronze Star, like narrative, it says I was in these 3 places, and those 3 places are they have like 6 places that the VA is recognizing as high burn pit areas, and 3 of those places are like written on like in my Bronze Star narrative. So it's kind of like you can't, fight with that. But but I mean, what about the people who don't have like what about the people who didn't have it recorded in there and who have been suffering? And so the problem with these issues, with immune disorder issues, is they're not, a lot of them are the invisible wounds. They're these things that make you, like, you're extremely tired. It's like the chronic fatigue. And a lot of times, and I know this because I've been told this for over a decade, it's all in your head. You're like you do something one day and like a normal thing, vacuuming, and then you're so tired from vacuuming there's like you literally have to lay down. That's not normal, right? Or you're getting swelling in your joints, or extreme muscle pain from doing laundry. That's not normal, right? And you go to the VA and you're saying, I want, this is what's happening, and they're saying, well, are you depressed? What's going, things like that. And I'm finding, in talking to other female veterans, a lot of female veterans are having that. They're being told a lot of the times that it's all in your head, and things like that, and being discounted as a population has been an issue. But I mean, and I don't think, I wouldn't like to say it's all female veterans this is happening to. I mean, obviously it's not, because it's a huge issue that's getting national attention now. They're finding a correlation that veterans, who have served, in Southeast Asia, in Iraq and Afghanistan, in the cities where, I was, where our units were, are having the same issues, the asthma, the gastrointestinal, the neurological, and they're now fast tracking our claims, through the system. But we've been, suffering for the last decade, being told, kind of in your head, because they're invisible. You don't, you're just tired. It's a little more than that, or it's pain you can't really pinpoint, or it's just, it hurts everywhere. I mean, it's hard. It's hard, and that can lead to a lot of depression and anxiety, and I know why our suicide rates for post 9/11 veterans are so high, because if you're continually told that the real pain you're experiencing, that you literally can't pinpoint some days, is all in your head. If you're told that by doctors that you trust over and over again, then you may think that it's all in your head, and the only way out is to kill yourself. I mean, I've had friends who've gotten to that point, and it's hard. It's really, really hard, and I've been in those dark. I mean, that's why I turned to art as an outlet, because it's exhausting to be exhausted, if that makes any sense.
That's a great segue. You mentioned the art. We're here because of an event put on by Uniting Us.
Right.
How is the art? It seems odd to some people that art would in any way soothe the wounds. that people with PTSD and other issues like that may have. How does art for you help?
Well, for me, one of my issues keeps me bedridden and housebound, especially during the summers because I react to heat,
Right.
and so I had to find something to do because I can't work, because I can't be relied on to like show up every day at the same time, because you don't know one day that you can get out of bed from the next day. And it's kind of the reasons why, like, if you can't lead troops, then that's why you're medically retired. So, that's why you can't work a 9-to-5 job. Even though if you look completely normal one day, that's, and that's why so many people's relationships, fall apart with people that don't understand, I could say civilians or whatever who don't understand, like people with PTSD versus people without it, or people with chronic illnesses and people without chronic illnesses, because you just don't understand the headspace. But it's like, yeah, I had to find something, because you can only binge watch so many episodes or read so many books or whatever. And when I was growing up, I mean, I would have said I'm not an artist by any means. I mean, I wasn't one of those people who can look at somebody and like draw a portrait, or paint, a Mona Lisa or anything like that.
Right.
I'm not a traditional artist in that respect. I didn't have that talent, but I love art. I mean, I would always say that maybe I was crafty. Before I retired, I didn't know that I had to give my kids my post 9/11 GI Bill, and because I was kind of rushed out with the medical retirement, I didn't get a chance to pass my benefits down to them. So after I was medically retired, I had this GI Bill to use that I couldn't pass down. And so I was like, well, I could try going to art school. That's something that interests me, but I don't have any talent. So I don't know how to draw or paint. So I said to the teachers, I said, we'll see if you're good, because let's see if you can teach, because I got nothing coming into this. I'm a blank slate. So, and, I had to, really take advantage of like the student disabilities, the Student with Disabilities Act, going into the classes. Because one, being a non-traditional student, because, being a 40-something, mother of 5, was a non-traditional student, one. But two, I didn't know what days I could attend class, being chronically ill. So, but every school that I attended, having a husband at the time who was, active duty, we moved around a lot, so I had to change, which wasn't, entirely horrible, because I got experience with different schools. But it gave me an opportunity to learn. So it was something that I could do on days that I couldn't do anything else. And I knew that a lot of VAs were trying art therapy. So I figured if people were doing art therapy, that this was something that, I could use my GI benefits to try, on my own, because it was something I was interested in, and it was something that I could do on days where I couldn't do anything else. And I found that it was a way I could express myself when I couldn't find the words or the motivation to say it out loud. Because I think we can say in art, or get out frustrations in art, or emotions, put it down on paper, that we can't, in any other way. And I found that that's what I can do. That's what I've been able to do. And it's helped me through a lot of things. And I found in sharing it with Uniting Us, I found out you know, in meeting other and networking with other female artists, that's been a salve to them as well.
Right. One of the goals of our mission to record stories like yours is to preserve them for future generations. So let's fast forward 50 or 100 years as somebody's watching this. What would you like to tell them?
Whew. I don't know. I'm hoping in 50 to 100 years from now that we have built a better society, that we have been able to honor our, in a way, our women veterans, in a way that they are feeling like someone sitting in my position, you know, 100 years from now, don't have a feeling of emptiness or fear when they are talking about their service. And that they, when they are going to a VA hospital or a war memorial, that they feel included and not excluded. Because when I'm talking to my peers now, I think it's all too common right now for us to feel excluded, to feel the other. And we feel that our story hasn't yet been told. And I'm hoping 50 to 100 years from now, our story will be part of the record. That it'll be the norm and not the exception to the rule.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I'm just really happy to be here this weekend, that we're getting an opportunity to share my grandmother's story, because she really started out the idea of service in our family at the Cadet Nurse Corps, because if she didn't do that, then my mom would have never been an Army nurse, and if my mom was never an Army nurse, I would have never gone into the Army, because I would have never thought, I think, that would have been, you know, that was my first instinct on how am I going to pay for college. And I think it was the best decision I ever made, because, you know, yes, was it hard? Yes. Did it show me that there was inequities in this world? Sure. Is there a battle still out there to be fought for women still serving, women who have served? Yes, but I think that's true about anything. I think, you know, the Women's Memorial and Uniting Us are doing a great, are being a great, you know, example of how we're honoring our women veterans now. I think now's our time to have our voices and our stories heard, and I think can only get better from here. And I'm glad that my art and my story is going to be added to that record, that historical record, and I'm glad that my family's story is going to be added to that.
Well, on behalf of the Americans of Wartime Experience, I thank you for sitting down, taking an hour out of your day to tell your story. But more importantly, I thank you for your service, because as I always say, and as you already know this, your service does matter. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.